Today at Speedy's Garage, we're preparing for an upcoming drag race event that we're planning to participate in. I've always raced mostly sportsmanry, which means you get the 3 amber lights consecutively, so blink, 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 and then you get the green, so you can kind of prepare for that launch. This particular event, though, is going to use what they call a pro tree, and it's a 0.5 or 5/10 of a second pro tree. And what that means is when both cars pull up in stage and you've lit both sets of bulbs, so I've lit both sets on my side and my opponent has lit both sets on their side, at some random time, the 3 yellows will just flash, and 0.05 of a second later, or 0.5 of a second later, the green goes off. So it's extremely fast, and you can't guess the light. It's pretty hard to red light because you're not able to kind of anticipate when that light's going to occur. But it's also a little bit more difficult to get a good reaction time. I've been following Demonology on his YouTube channel, and if you haven't checked him out, be sure you do so. I'll link up here to some of his videos. Also, he has become almost an expert at the pro tree. I've watched his reaction times on a lot of his races, and I'll see him win against cars that are probably maybe faster than his Demon, but because he's so quick on the light, he's already out ahead of them and they can't ever catch him as he goes down the track. So we're gonna give him a call, get a few pointers. Mr. Demonology, how are you, buddy?
Hey, what's going on, Speedy? How you doing?
Hanging in there, man. I'm getting ready for a drag race event coming up. Would you happen to have a few minutes to chat with me about the pro tree?
Yeah, sure I
I've got a couple of questions. I've raced a lot on the Sportsman tree, so I've gotten pretty comfortable with it. This particular event, it's going to be a, it's a 0.5 or I guess a 5/10 pro tree. When I started looking at the rules for NHRA, it looks like it's usually 4/10. Is the 5/10 kind of unusual, or is that just a different type of pro tree?
do. No, the 5/10 pro tree is designed for heavier cars, like our cars. Generally anything above 3,000 or 3,500 is going to be the 5/10 pro tree. The 4/10 pro tree is for the lighter cars, because the lighter cars have a better reaction time. But to be honest with you, it's pretty much all the same on the pro tree. You won't really notice the difference with your eyes. You'll just notice the difference looking at your reaction time.
Gotcha. So that's kind of where I want to focus in on, is if you got any tips. And obviously, you know, I've watched a lot of your videos and I see you win a whole bunch of races, sometimes against cars that I think are going to be a little bit faster than that Demon, but you seem to jump out and get out kind of in front of them, and then they just can't run you down. So if you've got some tips you can share. Now, we're obviously doing this on YouTube for my channel, and I know you're not going to give away all of your secrets, but if there's some stuff you can...
Man, I don't mind giving all my secrets. You know, they were given to me, and you know, the thing about Speedy it's all seat time and consistency. I mean, you can tell a guy how to do something, but if they don't go and practice with it, and if they don't have a consistent pattern that they're doing, you know, it's like giving them a diamond to a pig. You know, he don't know what to do with it.
Gotcha.
So, you know, seat time and consistency. So let's take a look at the sportsman tree. A lot of guys look at the sportsman tree a little different, and they do some little tricks on them. You know, you light the first bulb, and then you get the 3 bulbs that are coming down, and on the 3rd yellow is what people leave on. So what some guys do to get consistent on that is that they'll light the first 2, and some will use a visor, and the visor hides the 2 yellows and only shows the 3rd yellow. Or they'll do an open face helmet. So you see guys with an open face helmet, and they'll have like a visor on that open face helmet, and they'll light the first 2 bulbs, and then they'll kind of tilt their head down a little bit to where they only can see the 3rd yellow bulb. So when that 3rd yellow bulb flashes, boom, then they smash the bug, you know, as my
Man, that's actually a good idea, because I was going to ask you, my local track uses Sportsman tree every time I've been to it anyway. I normally do their testing tunes, and I was going to ask you if there was a way to try to practice pro tree, and I'd never even thought about that. Man, that's a really good idea.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way to practice it, because basically it's just the same thing. And what happens is that in your mind, what you do is as you see those lights drop, sometimes you will time those lights and you will anticipate them. Even though you're trying to focus in on that 3rd yellow, sometimes your mind will say, here it comes, and you'll be a little early. Now, guys that are really, really good, what they try to do is that they focus on, if you look at that light has a bunch of little LED ambers off in it. And they try to focus their eye on one of those LED ambers. And once they see that light up, boom, then they go. Now let's apply that to the Pro Tree. The thing with the Pro Tree is that you're going to light your two staging bulbs, and all you have to think about is the flash. The next flash you see, you need to step on the bug and you need to go. So how do we make that a little bit faster? This is a technique that I use. I don't recommend it to everybody. This last event that I went to, I didn't use that technique because of some other things that were happening or that I thought that was taking place. You got to understand, where I race at, it's a lot of grudge racers. And sometimes you don't have an auto tree. And if you don't have an auto tree, that means you have a guy that's controlling the light with the switch. And if he sees your car lurching forward, if he's for the other guy, he'll just hold that switch until you bump through the light.
Gotcha.
Now, if it's on an auto tree, you're good to go, and this technique will work perfect for you. So what I do, Speedy, is that I pull up to the first bulb, and I bring my RPM up to 1,800 RPM. First, you need to find out where your car will hold itself by foot braking. Now, whatever it holds itself by foot braking on the street, once you get on the track, you can add maybe 100 or 200 RPMs to that.
Gotcha.
Right? So let's say I know my car will hold itself at 1,800 RPM on the drag strip. So I'll light the first bulb, I'll bring my car up to 1,800 RPM, and then I'll use my foot brake to slowly bring me into the second bulb. I'm going to shallow into that second bulb. Once that second bulb is lit, I'm going to bear down on that brake. Now, while waiting for that Pro Tree to go off, I know that it's going to go off pretty quick. You got to realize the Pro Tree, after you light the second bulb, it can be instant, boom, on an auto start, or it can be within 1 second or 2 seconds. Generally, it doesn't go longer than 2 seconds.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is that when I'm at 1,800 RPMs, I get my second bulb lit. My technique is I slowly start to increase the RPM. So now it's coming from 1,800 to 1,900 to 2,000. You see the flash, boom, and I'm out of the hole.
Gotcha.
What this does is that it loads the drivetrain, and by loading the drivetrain, when I smash the bug, I'm jumping out ahead of everybody. Now, what messed me up at this last event that I was at, I was under the impression that the guy was going to be holding the button and a person was going to be operating it, because some rumors is that they didn't want people doing that technique that I was doing. So they wanted to make sure people were leaving, without increasing the RPM. So after the event was over with and I found out that it was an auto tree, I went back and raced another friend of mine. And just to give you an example, when I'm just looking at the flash without raising my RPM while I'm waiting on the flash, I was cutting 260 for my reaction time. And this is a 400 Pro Tree.
Okay.
So I was cutting at a 260. Once I realized that it was an auto tree and I was allowed to do my technique, or I told myself, yeah, I can do my technique and get away with it, my reaction time went down to a 190.
Wow.
190 and 260 is really huge. Just to give you an example, the gentleman's car that I was racing, I ran a 10.3 in the quarter mile. The guy that I was racing against, his car is a modded Hellcat, upper lower pulleys. He also has nitrous on it, but he agreed to take his car off the bottle. His car ran a 10.1. It didn't make a difference because I beat him to the finish line. I was amazed that I was able to beat him to the finish line running a 10.3, and he ran a 10.1. The difference was our reaction time. My reaction time was a 190. His reaction time was like a 3.8.
Yep.
So that was the difference in that particular race. So I think if you use that technique, and it's something you have to practice with, and the main thing is you have to be consistent. If you're not consistent and you're always changing, which is something that I always fall into, I get to the track, if someone gets in my head, I'm trying to do some other technique I knew I shouldn't be doing, and I'll end up losing the race. But if I stay consistent, then I'm going down the track really good. So
Gotcha. Well, the good news is
anyway,
we get a test and tune day leading up to the actual race event. So I'm planning on spending that first day kind of dialing myself in. You know what I mean? I know I got the car set up because it'll run pretty consistently on the Sportsman tree. I figure I got to just dial myself in. That driver mod that I hear you talk about sometimes, I got to get myself kind of prepared for that Pro Tree. And I did race in an event earlier this year that had a Pro Tree, and my reaction times were pretty bad, man. They were like 400s. You know what I mean? So I got to do way better than that if I'm going to run any chance of winning anything at this event. So that's why I wanted to kind of chat with you. When you say you're using your foot brake, just for the folks that might not know, he's using his brake in the car. He's not using his trans brake on the Demon. He's using his foot brake, actually holding the brake pedal down, and then, like he said, he's feeding in some RPMs and letting it bump into that second light, like we talk about, that pre-stage light. And then he starts easing into the gas a little bit more, preparing for those Pro Tree, those 3 lights to illuminate. Well, that's good stuff, man. That's really good stuff. So let me ask you this: when you're staged, are you staring at the lights, or are you staring down the track and just having the lights in your peripheral vision?
No, when I'm staged, I try to stare at the bulb. When I'm doing the Pro Tree, I try to stare at the first yellow on that Pro Tree, and I try to focus in on the amp. And boom, as soon as I see it flash, I'm stepping on the bug. Now, one little extra tip that I can give you, because you know as well as I know, the cars run better when they're cold. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is that the stall is really strong when the car is cold, and it will push you through the light. Exactly. If you're using that technique that I'm talking about. So what I'll do is I'll do my burnout, and if you watch closely on some of my footage, as soon as I do my burnout, I will get on my brake before I pull up to the bulbs, and I'll bring the stall up. I'll do that maybe 2 times. That way the torque converter is already full of fluid, and that helps me keep the car in place without pushing it through the light. Those are some little tricks and techniques that I've learned from Rod Hetzel. It works for me, and it keeps the car. If I go up there and that stall converter is cold, even trying to foot brake it at 1800 is pushing me through the light.
Gotcha.
But if I can get the fluids build up on it and so forth, now I can get up there and I can get a little bit more stall. Like I said, after I put it at 1800, after that second bulb is lit, I'm slowly bringing into the RPM. And if you watch some of my videos, you can hear the car coming up a little bit on RPM. And then when I see that flash, boom, I'm stomping that bug.
Go.
And I'm finding that it's not breaking loose like with the trans brake. The trans brake, I have a 50-50 chance pretty much that the car is going to break loose. If it hooks, man, it's good. But this way, the car is not hooking, and I've been able to get my tire pressure up to 22 pounds of air on a good prep track. And you know as well as I do, when you get that tire pressure up, your car is going to run faster.
Exactly. Yeah, it's less rolling resistance. Now, when you're doing the Pro Tree practice, do you find any of the little online computer trees that you can practice on, where you tap the space bar or let go of the space bar to kind of test your reaction time? Are they worth fooling with, or is that just a gimmick?
No, I really think they're worth fooling with, because what they're doing is that they're training your eye. And anytime you can train your eye, you can get more repetition in, then it's going to help you react. Now, obviously, the best time that you're going to have the time in the seat, but before I get to the track, I want to train my eye over and over and over and over again. I don't want it to be I want my brain already thinking about, I'm looking for the flash. Now with that Pro Tree, I try to concentrate, like I said again, on that first bulb. Now you got to find your own technique. What some people do is that they look through the light and look for the flash. Man, it comes up. What I found that's best for me, if I can really, really focus on one of those ambers, it gets me concentrating on that light even more so. So I kind of squint my eye down and concentrate on that amber, and then when it goes, boom, I'm stepping on that bug. I'm excited.
Nice.
And the car's going down the track.
Cool, man. I really appreciate all the advice. I'll text you and let you know how I'm doing at the event. I got a question. I've been noticing on your car a little bit of a change up in the color scheme on it lately. I've started to see some lettering. It looks like some Asian lettering or something around the tail end. Tell me a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, you see, I run a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu school under Gracie Baja on the Gracie Baja franchise in Mansfield, Texas. And so in Jiu-Jitsu, we believe Jiu-Jitsu for everyone. And I really like teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and sharing that throughout the world. And that Asian writing on the backside is just as Jiu-Jitsu in a Japanese writing. So anywhere I'm at and I'm on the track, I'm going to share the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, particularly through Gracie Baja. If it's a Gracie Baja school near you, man, go join it. You're going to have a good time. You're in the military, or did military combatives. So it's like submission wrestling or submission-based grappling. But what that represents, and so I represent the Gracie franchise.
Nice. And last question I got for you, man. Tell me how you got into Mopars. You and I chatted about that just a little bitty bit. You had was it a Challenger or a Charger at one time when you got you into these cars?
Yeah, what got me into Mopars is when I was growing up, I had two cousins that were pretty much like uncles to me. I considered them like my uncles. But one had a GTX and the other one had a Super B. And they would race those on the back streets of the neighborhood I grew up in the drag strip called the Yellow Belly Drag Strip. And man, they would beat everybody. They had 440s in them and so forth. And then another one of my cousins bought a Barracuda with a 440 with a 6-pack on it. And I believe he had I think it was a 4-speed manual in it. But when I went to buy my first car, it was a 70 Dodge Challenger with a 383. I tore it up on the drag strip racing, bust the timing chain on it, and when I told my dad, hey, what are we going to do to fix it? He said, well, it looks like it's going to be a life lesson. I believe you're going to take auto mechanics. So auto mechanics and
Hey, man, I know you're a busy man. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I really appreciate all the advice. Hey, make sure you put Challenger Fest on your calendar for next year. It's going to be May 3rd and 4th in Bowling Green, Kentucky at Beach Bend Raceway, man. We'd love to have you come down.
Hey, I will do it, brother. I love to see your content. Keep putting stuff up, man. I'll follow you on a regular basis.
Awesome, man. I appreciate it. Hope to talk to you again soon.
All right, take care, brother.
Take care, buddy. Yep, bye-bye. So that was some really good advice we got from Demonology. I've been watching his channel for a while. If you haven't checked it out, be sure you do so. He must go to the track almost every day. He's always racing somebody, posts 2 or 3 drag race videos a week, and I've been trying to watch some of his techniques. And I watch some of his videos over and over and watch him launch, and you can learn from people like that have a whole lot of experience. He's got someone who's taught him. Now I'm going to try to learn from Demonology, and we kind of pass that knowledge down. I'll teach it to somebody once I've mastered it. And you saw he's a super nice guy. He was a former police officer. I believe he retired from the police force there in Texas. He now runs that Gracie Barra Jiu-Jitsu school there. Super nice guy. Talked to him several times. We've exchanged some messages on our YouTube channels and whatnot, and so really happy to have gotten to know him. And again, it goes back to that car culture that I've mentioned a bunch of times. You meet the coolest people, especially in the Dodge Mopar community, it seems. You just meet the coolest people in that car culture, super friendly, and glad to know him. Hopefully you like the content. Be sure to click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell so you get notified of new content. Check us out on Instagram. It's at Speedies_Garage, as well as our website, www.speediesgarage.net. Hopefully we'll see Demonology and you at Challenger Fest next year. I'll see you out there.